This is Austin Liti Limits, where authors talk to authors about books and the craft of storytelling. Sponsored by Blue Ink Review, because typing the end is just the beginning. Find out more at blueinkreview.com. Deanna Roy is a best-selling author of both nonfiction and fiction under several different pen names, including J.J. Knight. Recently, she sat down for an interview with our Ron Seybold to talk about publishing her early works independently. And today, in the second part of his interview, Ron picks up that conversation with how her independent experiences led Deanna to land an agent and join the ranks of the traditionally published authors.
I'm curious about making a transition into becoming an agented author. What was the opening steps for that to happen for you?
Well, I started the whole journey trying to get an agent. I spent decades doing that. And when I finally was successful at self-publishing, there sort of became the cool kids for going, well, we hate trad. We don't want trad. Trad's no good. So I've spent another almost a decade in that world where that was the side of the fence you were on. But then once I had a lot of successful books under my belt, I had a passion project that I knew in my heart I could not sell well if I self-published it. And this was a young adult novel. I had no young adult books under my belt at all, but I was very aware of how hard it is to get traction with a young adult book in the self-publishing space. The things you need for a successful young adult book at the level that I expect to earn on a book that I put out. You need library school journal, you need access to the catalog systems that libraries order from. You need things that you just don't get when you're self-published. You don't have access to them. So I felt to get this book its very best possibility in life, I needed to go out and, go to the dark side and get myself an agent. And look at the trad world. I did my research. I knew the things that I was up against. Luckily, at that point, I had 4 pen names. So what I was looking for in an agent is someone who would represent me for this book and this pen name, but would not have anything to do with my other pen names, which were the ones that I was actively self-publishing. So I was going to release this book as Deanna Roy, as my real name. I had not published as Deanna Roy in a long time, and it didn't matter to me if I got tied up in a contract with a non-compete that said you can't publish anything else for 2 years, and be like, okay, it would be all right. I couldn't do that with my best-selling books because I put out a book every 3 or 4 months. Very important to me to separate those two. I needed an agent who understood that. So I went out in the query trenches like everyone else. My first round of querying with this book, I got, I think one person requested it and then rejected. I went through about 40 rejections and I was like, what's going on here? I felt really strange because it's like I have sold over 1 million books. I hit the USA Today bestseller list many times, many, many, many times. I'm a proven entity. I'm exactly, you would think, what someone would want. And I wondered, okay, do I come off as a diva? I was trying to understand what I might be doing that would make a no agent really take interest. So I went to the Writers League. And I'd been a member since 1996. And I'd gone to their agent conference, and I actually spent years photographing the agents conference and then still, meeting the agents and querying them afterwards. And then since 2014, I've been speaking at the conference, and this is 2021. So we're a year into the pandemic. And I wrote the Writers League and said, can you just look at my query and see if there's something really dumb I'm doing? And Becca Oliver took me aside and said, it's in the wrong order. She said, when you've got a bio like yours, you don't put it in the normal bio position. You put it at the top. Wow. And of course, that means as soon as she said it, it made sense. It was hard for me because I'm not the kind of person who's in anybody's face about how much I've sold or what I've done. I like to be sort of quiet about it. And I mean, it's on my books, it's there, but I just didn't, I was doing what I was always told. It's like, you've got to personalize it at first, then you hook them, you talk about your book, and then you talk about yourself. I just had been doing that. So I did what she said. I rewrote the bio. I was a little squeamish, and I'm like, I'm so, and I put it at the top. And then the game completely changed,
Wow.
completely changed. I immediately I had a call within a week. And then as soon as I alerted everyone else that I had a call, I had everybody call. I think only 2 people didn't do a call with me out of the 12 that I sent with the new version.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, okay, this is different. So I got to choose. So when I went with my agent, she's fantastic. And she did not have a lot of authors who were hybrid, but she and I got along so well. We could just communicate. I could just tell. Like, a couple of the people I talked to, they were like, well, this is how it'll be. And this is and I was like, I could already feel myself going, they're going to be too pushy for me. If
Yes.
I push back, it's not going to work. But she was fantastic. And we've kind of grown up together in pursuing contracts since then, for how to protect my indie publishing while we pursue doing trad deals. And there's still been bumps in the road, but overall, we have worked together well in figuring out what we want to have happen with my career in mind, not just a book in mind.
Was there another press that was offering a deal that was similar to what you got out of Amazon and you had to
No, no,
choose?
but that one. So we went on sub with the YA pretty quickly. She had a few edits she suggested. It didn't take me even a few days to finish them. And we went on sub, and the pandemic really affected the speed with which the editors were responding. And we were having some editors be interested. And we went through a whole process. And somehow all of that interest got strung out. Like, they were like, let's call a meeting in a few weeks. And then a few weeks would pass, and we'd like, here's some potential dates. And like, okay, well, it was the strangest thing. And she said it was the strangest thing that she'd ever encountered, that it was like we were perpetually trying to schedule meetings that never happened.
Mm.
So finally, after, I think we went on for almost a year doing that, I finally told her, I said, well, we can keep talking to those people if we want to, but while I have you, I had several friends who were publishing with Amazon's imprints,
Mm-hmm.
with their current big name pen names, and getting deals that allowed them to both indie publish, self-publish, and publish with the traditional press at the same time. I'm like, I want to do that, because I felt like with Amazon's internal marketing behind it, I could, feasibly reach a higher level of sales than I had before.
Yeah.
So we did not go wide with those submissions. I called my agent and I said, hey, do you know anybody that you can submit to? Because she really wasn't a romance at all. She does book club fiction and children's literature. That's pretty much her wheelhouse. I said, would you be willing to submit over there? She goes, oh, totally. Just shoot me the book and we'll send it out.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay. And of course, they took it really fast. It was longer to hash out the details than it was to go through acquisitions. Because Amazon knows your sales. I didn't have to tell them anything. They could just pull it up and go, okay. And they know my whole life in history of publication. And I think that was one of the reasons that we got a deal so quickly. But I just signed a second deal with them last year. The third book will come out in October. And
Have
it's
they all been one book deals then?
the first deal was a 2-book deal.
Yeah.
And those 2 books came out last year. Of course, the first book was written, so they published that one pretty quickly. I wrote the second one. They published it. It was going to come out 6 months later, but then they pulled it forward. So they came out about 4 months apart. The first one did amazing. It did well. It earned out in like 2 weeks. So by trad, I think, it did well. But for me, looking at the money I made on that book compared to my indie stuff, it fell sort of well in the middle. It was
Mm-hmm.
not a top selling book for me. It was not a bad selling book. It was just sort of an average release. So when it was time to sign another deal with them, I was like hesitant. And I think they knew I was hesitant
Yeah.
because I didn't feel like it had done what I expected. And meanwhile, I had spent a lot of time on their books and not written ones for my indie. And so my indie career was starting to come down a little. And I was nervous that this trajectory is going down. So when we went back for a second deal, I said, here's the thing, I'm going to publish whenever I want. And I can't have a contract that restricts me or I can't sign it. So, and I told my agent that up front. I said, before we even go in negotiations, I need you to understand that if you don't feel like you want to go in there with this the attitude that we're going to walk away, then we shouldn't go in. And she goes, nope, I got you. I'm behind you. If we walk away, we walk away. Because I know there are agents out there who do care a lot about their relationships with their editors.
Right.
But mine, she seems really good about maintaining these amazing relationships, even when it gets hard, right? And the negotiations get hard.
That's why they're there, right?
That's why they're there. She has been fantastic. I just, she's the best. So we went in and it got hard. It got hard. Legal just flat out refused to do what I asked for. And so I was sort of like, I'm so sorry, we're not gonna be able to do this. And then I think the editor and my agent got together and they came up with a brilliant solution. It was so brilliant. And of course, I'm under, non-disclosures about how it worked out. But all I can say is that it was an out-of-the-box solution that legal accepted, editorial suggested, acquisitions accepted, I accepted, and it was kind of the best of everything. And what it meant was that I could publish my bread and butter series as I wanted, and it would not impact the book that's coming out in October. Now, for me as a human, I mean, there's only so much I can do in a day. I'm not going to push a book right up against theirs. But what it does give me the freedom to do is if the book I publish with them either one falters and fails, or B doesn't keep my backlist alive, I can just immediately publish another one. I can indie publish a book, recover my income, and I'm not harming a book that obviously isn't going to land, right?
Yeah.
So I feel covered. If the book takes off and is sailing, well, sure, we're just going to let it ride and I'll hold off on publishing for a while. But that's what I needed out of a contract. I'll never get that from a big five. It won't happen. But with an Amazon imprint, they understood that there's a big picture out there, not just for me as an author, but for the books they have and how they fit into my overall, backlist of books.
We just answered the last question on my list, which is, would you self-publish again? You are self-published.
Oh yeah, no, I would never stop. The control is fantastic. The timeline is fantastic. The traditional stuff sometimes is inconvenient. This year, in fact, I love them. I love my publisher, but I was scheduled to publish in January 2025. And so I lined up my entire indie list to kind of avoid that period and have time to really push that book. And then I get the call, you've been moved up to October 22nd, 2024. And then I'm like, woo! So now, in order to get this book that I'm currently writing out with enough gap before theirs, I'm having to write it extremely fast. So yeah, as soon as I get off here, I'll be hitting it again. And I had to move up my editor. I had to move up everything to fit into this sort of immovable schedule. But yeah, no, I don't think I'll ever stop self-publishing. I could be bought. I probably could be bought if we go wide with the romance and they offer a figure that is more than I would make in maybe like 2 years of self-publishing, then I could be bought. But it's a hard thing because if you let your indie career fall, it is very hard to get it to go back up.
How about that, huh? Mm-hmm. Well, you've been extremely successful, and that means you need nothing but hours in the day to keep writing a book, and also the willingness to shoulder the risk with investments. And I mean, clearly the investment is a lot lower with Amazon. It's more of an investment in trust, I guess, right? They don't expect you to be buying Amazon AdWords.
No, right. And I do run some ads for my Amazon books because I want to reach my existing audience. So the way that I advertise my indie books, which is primarily through Facebook ads, I still do with my trad books to a certain extent. I grab all the low hanging fruit, so the
Yeah.
first couple weeks on a Facebook ad, you're just going to grab up all the people who've never clicked on that ad, but generally click on your ads. And Facebook
Mm.
knows who those people are. And so
Wow.
I can have a pretty reasonable expenditure and get a big boost of sales. But of course, most of my fans are on my newsletter, or they're in my Facebook group, or they're on my pages. But there are quite a few I reach only through Facebook ads, and I do run those.
How important would you say a newsletter is to your?
It's it's everything. I would not be talking to you right now if I didn't have a newsletter. When I published my first 12 books that didn't do awesome, 12 books, y'all, 12 books that did not do awesome, I didn't have a newsletter yet. And I wasn't really thinking about marketing that much. It was more about what I had to say and getting it out
Right.
there.
Yes.
With book 13, though, I had help. They were helping me rewrite my books for the market. And they said, well, this is all for nothing if you don't have a way to sell them your next book. And the only way you can do that reliably is through a newsletter, because Facebook has an algorithm. They're not going to show your post to everyone. TikTok has the craziest algorithm of all, right? Insta has an algorithm. So if you want to be sure you're getting your message to them that you have a new book out, you need to get them on your newsletter list. So at the very last minute, before Forever Innocent was going to come out, I went and signed up at MailChimp for a free account. And you can have, 1,000, I think, it free, at least back then.
Yeah.
And at the very back of my book, it said, to learn about when my next book is coming out, sign up here. I didn't have a newsletter magnet. I didn't have an incentive, nothing. I just said here. But what I accidentally did was when that book comes to its soaring conclusion, you want more. It doesn't
Yes.
matter that it was a happily ever after. The end of Forever Innocent is, it's almost like it's the new beginning of their lives. And
Yeah.
I think the first day I had big sales, I had like 100 people sign up for my newsletter. And I sold about 1,000 copies in the first couple weeks that book was out, which was phenomenal. I don't think I'd sold that many of all my other books combined at that point. And of those 1,000 sales that I had, 700 of them had signed up for my newsletter with no incentive other than I'm going to write another book. And I
Wow.
think part of it was that they wanted to reply to me and say, please tell me it's another book with them in it. I had no intention of writing a sequel to Forever Innocent. It was a standalone book in my eyes, and I say that I think even on the Amazon retailer page where you have a note from the author, I think I say that. I'm like, I envision this as being a one-off, but everybody wanted to hear more from their story. So here's what I did. It was November when this happened, because the book came out in October. It was NaNoWriMo, and everybody said, write a sequel during NaNoWriMo and publish it as fast as you can. So I did. I wrote the book in November. I spent December getting it edited. It came out in January. I sold just as many as book 2 as I had a book 1. Book 1 went even bigger. Book 2 went even bigger. And suddenly I was writing book 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I was a 6-figure author, and I'd hit USA Today. But it was everything. But what caused that to happen? Newsletter.
Yeah.
Because I
Those
had that.
first 700 people were your sourdough starter.
Yep. And Amazon goes, oh, we've got a hit on our hands. And they recommended it to more people. And yeah, that's how it went.
Well, I got a million other questions you and I could cover on another interview, but I promised you 30 minutes and this has just flown by. For somebody who wants to get into this self-publishing thing and keep an eye on trad, is there something that they ought to think about as far as their mantra to hold these two in one bucket? I mean, you had to come to an understanding about how those were going to live together.
Mm-hmm. My big one in my case was that I had 2 pen names, and ne'er the contracts shall cross, right? So if I was going to sign a contract for the Big 5 for Deanna, it could not include the books I was writing for JJ, and that had to be understood. If you are going to write everything under one pen name, you have to realize that they're going to try to take you for a couple of years, and you
Yeah.
have to be willing to walk away if you
Yeah.
can't negotiate something. Now, I've seen some language out there that's terrific. And so people sent me some language where you can get a non-compete to be just their series. And so if you had a self-pub series, you could keep doing that series. I've seen some great language where they limit the non-compete to just 3 months. And so usually waiting 6 months in self-pub is not, a death knell to your career. So that also works. But you've got to understand contracts or you cannot do this. You absolutely cannot do both things because you will screw yourself completely.
Yeah. Yeah. But thank you so much for being so open about all of this. I really appreciate it. And we're certainly going to talk again.
Sure.
Clearly you really enjoy it still.
Oh, I do, right? I mean, this is my whole life. I've been a full-time author since really since 2015 is when I completely shut down my photography business and said I can't do it anymore. I'm not doing it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
in my heart, I've been a full-time author since like 2013, since I realized, okay, I can completely replace my old income with, why would I go back? All I do every day is write books, and I'm one of those people who loves the marketing part, right? So
yeah.
just creating all the fun stuff, like all of my stickers on my merch on, I have a whole site where I sell those things. I have a Patreon. It's just too fun. It's way too fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. I'll let you go for now, and we'll be back in touch.
All right. Bye, Ron. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of Austin Liti Limits, made possible with help from our good friends at Blue Ink Review, where typing "the end" is just the beginning. Find out more at blueinkreview.com.